Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to our Saturday conversation this morning. We're going to meet Ann Lewin, who many people will know. Ann Lewin has been a friend of mine for, I think, about 35 years or just more. We might come back to that a little bit later on. She's well known here through her writing, through Thoughts for the Day, which she's done for us, through various books and things which might just come up in conversation as we go on. Good morning, Ann.
Morning.
Nice to have you with us. We actually meet fairly regularly, quite often when I'm going to the cathedral or lots of other times. So we've been close friends for a long time. Can you remember when you started going to church? And it was South Stoneham, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. No, it was when I was 3. War broke out when I was 3.
Gosh.
And because
this was the Second World War.
Oh yeah, yes, yes, it was. But because churches couldn't be blacked out, evensong was brought to the afternoon, and that meant that my parents could take me to church because my brothers were already in the choir, so we were all there together. So it was evensong when I was 3, and it's evensong has wafted over me for 82 years now.
Yeah. So and that was Highfield.
That was Highfield Church.
Yeah, Highfield Church, yes. Yeah.
In the days before it became what it's like now, it was a very sort of ordinary, middle of the road church with 8 o'clock communion, matins in the morning, evensong in the evening, and that was really it.
Yeah. It's now become a big student church in Southampton, for those who don't know it. But it was like that. And I suppose you've been connected really through most of your life with one church or another.
Oh, I have, yes. Apparently, I used to sing. I used to sing All Things Bright and Beautiful, whatever anybody else was singing when I was 3. That was fine.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's been part of my life ever since I can remember, really. And so I often say God got hold of me when I was quite young, and he's never let go.
Yeah, that's right. And your career took you away, didn't it? So off for teacher training.
Well, yes, I did a degree in Southampton, and then I went to Exeter to do my postgraduate year. And then I taught in Worcester for 5 years. And then I went to Sheffield, where I was for 15 years. And then I came back to Southampton for the last 7 of my active teaching years. Yeah. And it was sometime during that time that I think you and I met.
We did. So I can't actually remember our first meeting, but it was probably sometime in 1985.
It was when you were a new curate in Maybush.
Yeah. So I actually remember
there was a Franciscan mission.
Absolutely.
And I was part of the team. And you were priested in the middle of the mission.
Yeah.
Weren't you?
I was, and my first presiding at the Eucharist was the final service of that mission.
That's right.
As well. So yes, I mean it's a preparation for that is when I principally remember meeting you. That was 1986, 1987.
That's right.
So you know, good 35 or so years ago.
Right.
And by that time, I think you finished teaching. Then had moved into the university work round about then.
Yes, probably. I can't remember when it was I stopped teaching actually, but it was round about then. And yes, I remember this new curate with lots of black hair.
Yeah, those were the days.
Those were the days. Wearing a cassock that I think he still wears now.
I do. So
there's
the little advert for J&M sewing in Newcastle. So it's just beginning to wear out after 35 years.
Some people would be delighted that you're making use of things instead of buying new things and throwing them away every year.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you were working as an advisor in the university, which was really interesting because quite a lot of the time was helping overseas students coming in, wasn't it? You met some really interesting people through that, some of whom we've still got connections with.
Yeah, that's right. I think it was just as I began working that the first Gulf War began, and a student came and said he needed help, and he came from Iraq, and I said, well, you know, are you a Muslim? He said, no, I'm a Christian. So I sort of put paid to one idea that I got, which was that he could apply to the Muslims for help because they're very good at supporting each other.
Yeah.
So it was a question of getting help for him. And in those days, the Department of Social Security would give 6 weeks worth of income support to students whose funding temporarily stopped for any reason. So I rang the local DSS and said, I've got a student whose funding has stopped and I want to come down with him and sort out income support. And the chap said, where's he from? And I said, Iraq. And he laughed. And I said, why are you laughing? And he said, well, we're at war with them. I said, well, that's irrelevant. Your rules say that you can give income support. And he had to find his rule book and look it up, but it was true. And so I went down to the DSS with him because I thought he might get a rather rough ride if he went on his own. And he's still around, living in Southampton, and he finished getting his degree. And he got married, he's got a child, and he's actually a Coptic Christian, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
So he goes off and joins the church in London from time to time. So that was the first one, and there've been various others since. There was a group when the war in Yugoslavia began. I had 4 students who turned up at my desk to say, we want to study here, and we've been bombed out in Sarajevo, and we're here and we just need help. And how do you get help? They were students, so they couldn't get income support, and they couldn't get grants because they were foreign.
Yeah.
But there was a chap called George Soros, economists around may remember, who set up a thing called the One World Society. And he said, anyone who will sign up to be part of my One World Society, if they are formerly from Yugoslavia, I will give £3,000 a year to. So it didn't take them long to sign up.
No, but it didn't.
And of course that helped, but they still had nothing much to live on. So I became a beggar for a year, and I kept on asking people for money. And people said, well, are they Christian? And I said, what's that got to do with it? They're people in need. And if you're worried about whether they're Christian or not, just go and read the parable of the Good Samaritan and see how you feel afterwards. So that was all right.
Well, that helped things along. And it was during these years that you started writing, didn't you, as well? Around about the same sort of time.
Well, yeah. Well, I've always written. I think I was one of those people who was, in quotes, good at English.
Yeah.
And I've always loved words and using words. And my life became impossible at one stage, which was why I eventually left teaching. And I began writing a sort of journal, partly because if you write about things, it gets them outside instead of letting them go on like a non-stop record inside.
Yeah.
And so that's when I began. But then the things that I wrote that I began sharing with other people were really about the years that I spent looking after my mother as she moved further and further into dementia. And so the mother care poems, as they're known, were the first ones that I shared with people. And people said, oh, you want to get these published? Nobody would publish them. There's no demand for that sort of thing, people said. So I did it myself with a bit of advice from other people and printed something like 1,000 copies of a little pamphlet.
Yeah, I've still got it. Here.
Unfinished Sentences, it was called. And I said to the people who told me that I ought to share it, you've got to help me share it then. And quite by chance, and it really was chance, that the thing came out just before Christmas. So people felt it was okay to buy one of these to put in. And they all went. And it went on from there. And then eventually the Methodist Publishing House.
Just before that, of course, in those days we were typing things, weren't we? And then I got an Amstrad computer which had a little daisy wheel on it for
that's right.
So I think I actually typed them up, didn't I? For
you did.
for publication in those days. But yes, you're quite right. You then went on to rather grander people doing the typesetting for you?
Yeah, Methodist Publishing House had been quoting my stuff, and they wanted to quote something and asked permission. And I said, fine, by the time you get round to doing your book, mine will all be out of print and I can't afford to do it anymore. And they wrote back and said, we don't think your work ought to go out of print. How would you feel if we published it? So it took me a very long time to say, go ahead.
Yeah.
And they did. And then they went out of publication, and Canterbury Press with the lovely Christine Smith, who's a priest of Winchester Diocese, said that she would like to meet me and talk about something that she wanted to publish. And it became quite clear that she was trying to get me on their list, which is where I ended up. So that's where I am.
So I think probably that your best-selling book is Watching for the Kingfisher, which this is the one that's gone through many iterations to arrive at this. And the Kingfisher poem is probably still the most quoted, isn't it? It's
I'm sure. Yes.
Yeah, it's quoted a lot. If you look up Ann Lewin Kingfisher, you'll find it all over the place.
It's gone all over the world.
Yeah. Even the Archbishop of Canterbury, didn't he quote it not long ago in Synod?
I think he did.
Yeah, I think he wrote to you and said, could he quote it? It's one of many. The mother care ones were particularly interesting because they were very personal, very distressing, because your mother wasn't at all well at that point.
Well, no, she just lost any sort of sense of what was real and what wasn't. And so I just wrote about the experience of having to wash her, which is quite a difficult thing to take on. Yeah. And especially in a family where bodies were not displayed to anybody else. And my father, when he was changing to his bathing trunks on, used to sort of swathe himself in an enormous towel.
Yes. And, you know, that's how it were, wasn't it?
We got the message that, you know, you didn't display bodies. And so that was quite hard. But then there came the point when my mother didn't recognise me.
Yeah. Can I read? Can I read Identity Crisis?
Yeah, do.
Which a knighted figure on the stairs. The second time that evening, I can't sleep. Once more, I led my mother back to bed. Sleep well, I said. I'll soon be up myself. Don't disturb Anne, she said maternally. I won't, said Anne. That's the one that stuck with me, because my mother also went through a period of dementia and all that sort of stuff as well. It's really distressing.
Yeah, and actually, as you read that, it all, you know, the remembrance of that came back.
Yes,
it doesn't leave you.
No, that's right.
And then I had another example of looking after somebody with dementia when the brother who'd helped me look after my mother then developed dementia himself, and I became his main carer, and that was really, well, it was almost more than I could bear.
Yes.
I know what it's like being a carer for somebody with dementia.
Yeah. And
the days when you go away thinking, I can't do this, but you know that you'll be back the next day.
That's right. Yes, it's just going on, really, and sort of almost past the stage that you can endure it, but you just have to keep on doing it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But then that led to other writings as well. I mean, they're often called poems, but are they poems or prayers or reflections? They go over the different genre, don't they? It doesn't matter what they're called. Very good. But it led on to other things. A few years ago, we did a book which originally was published as Growing in Love, but I think it's now Love is the Meaning, about Julian of Norwich. That was a Lent book that we used in the parish, and people really enjoyed that. And then you've done a lot of liturgical writing as well, haven't you? Started off with Words by the Way and then became Seasons of Grace.
Yes, yeah.
And it's fascinating how the writings then led on to leading lots of other things, didn't they?
Well, in one way, that last one that you mentioned, Seasons of Grace, was when I thought I'm not going to be around very much longer. That was about 15 years ago. And
I'm not ready yet.
I decided it was time for me to stop organising things, but I thought that the material that I developed over the years might be useful. So that's how that book came into being. So it's got, you know, aids for leading quiet days and Eucharistic prayers for using on different occasions and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
You can dip into.
And if you worship with us in the Avon Valley Churches, you might often see when it's a printed service sheet, AL underneath the Eucharistic prayer, and that indicates then that it's one of Ann's. I think the one thing that I've taken from this and watching this over the years is a kind of a blossoming of life in a different way at a relatively late stage in life. And that's led to all sorts of leading retreats, hasn't it, and speaking at things and writing for things, including it's a Bible reading fellowship that your daily notes are for.
That's right. Yes, I've just been asked to write some notes which will be published in 2023. And when I was asked, I said, well, yeah, I'll write them, but I've no guarantee that I'll be around when you publish them.
Yeah, well, I hope you will.
That was just a bit of a joke, but
yeah,
the more I've thought about it, the more I've felt how difficult it's going to be to write Bible notes which are relevant to life as people are living it in 2023.
Yes.
We don't even know what we're doing in 2021. No. And they want the material by the end of the year. So it's going to be quite interesting to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the great learning points of the last year, we've generally, in the West particularly, thought that we can plan ahead and we know what's going to be happening, and we book our holidays for next year and all that sort of stuff. But we've realised actually that there isn't anything certain, is there, whether it's financial or whether it's in the rest of our lives. So it does make us change. I think change the way we plan and change the way we look at the future. Yeah. But I think, are you thinking that retirement might be eventually beckoning? You've cut down somewhat, haven't you, on some of the things you're doing?
Well, on the whole, I mean, nobody's asked me to lead a retreat or a quiet day, so that makes life simpler because I don't have to decide. Well, I have decided actually that I'm not going to lead any long retreats anymore. I take up more energy than I've got these days. And I do sometimes do a half day or a seminar or something.
Yeah,
but I think. And it's been a great opportunity throughout life. And one of the things that I'm most concerned to do is to help people to explore their own spiritual life. And that's what I was doing through the retreats and the quiet days and through the conversations with individuals as well. Because I just think it's the most important thing that we can do, actually, is to think about our relationship with God. And I can't say that my relationship with God has never had any complaints involved, because there have been many times when I've thought, why is this happening?
Yes.
I've had 2 encounters with cancer, and Gary might read one of the poems about my experience with cancer.
I might be able to do it. Just keep talking for a moment.
Yes, I can't remember the actual.
No. We might have to come back to that one.
Yeah, but it's the thing that I've never doubted that God is in it somewhere. But I haven't always enjoyed the way that he's been there.
Yeah.
It can be quite difficult. But at least, it's faith is really about living with questions and not giving in when the questions seem to be difficult. I don't think faith is about having all the answers.
Not at all, no.
I don't think that helps at all, really.
And I think this actually quite neatly leads on to a poem which you were going to finish with today, which is called Revelation, isn't it?
It is.
And do you want to say a word about that?
Yes, I will. If you're old enough to remember the days when we had the Alternative Services book, which had readings on a 2-year cycle, and the readings were taken from all kinds of different versions of the Bible, which was helpful, rather than what we do now, which is on the whole to have just one. And in year 2, on the Sunday after Epiphany, the New Testament reading ended up with the words, "We're God's work of art, created in Christ Jesus to live the good life as from the beginning he'd meant us to live it." And I remember hearing those words, and it wasn't very often that you had a Sunday after Epiphany. And because it only came around every other year anyway, if it did come around, it was one of the best kept secrets of the Church of England, I think.
Yes. Ephesians 2:10 in the Jerusalem Bible, if you want to look it up.
That's right.
Mm.
And I remember when I heard that, it really sort of hit me, and I thought, gosh, can that be true? And in the end, I wrote my feelings about it. Which I will try and find now. Revelation is called. And in the middle, there's a reference to statues that Michelangelo left that was called the slaves, I think. And they're half finished. They're still stuck in the material that they're being carved from. Anyway, Revelation, God's work of art, that's me. Then beauty must lie in the eye of the beholder. I feel more like one of those statues Michelangelo left, half emerging from the marble block, full of potential, on the verge of life, but prisoned still by circumstance and fear. Yet part of me is free, and you are still creating, bringing to life the promise that is there. Sometimes by hammer blows which jar my being, sometimes by tender strokes half felt which waken me to life. Go on, Lord, love me into wholeness. Set me free to share with you in your creative joy, to laugh with you at your delight in me, your work of art.
That's lovely. Thank you. Well, thank you for being with us today. People around the Avon Valley Churches will probably see Anne again on occasion here, either online or actually in person at various times. But it's been really interesting talking about the background to the books. They are available online through the Church House Bookshop and other places, so do have a look. And after we've finished, we're going to hear a final poem of Anne's called Life Blessing, which I will sing, which will play us out this morning. So thank you all very much. We're here tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for our morning service, and we're here every day with thoughts for the day, one thought to another. Thank you very much, Anne. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Good.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Deep peace enfold you, encircle and hold you, in youth and in age, at life's every stage, at birth and in growing, in failing and dying, the sacred three, your protection be. Deep peace enfold you, encircle and hold you, in youth and in age, at life's every stage, at birth and in growing, in failing and dying, the sacred three, your protection be. Your protection be. I've just noticed that hymn was written 20 years ago yesterday, so thank you, Anne, for that poem and for your friendship over so many years. Bye-bye.